In the world of Naruto, there have been numerous villains who've appeared, some of them some of the most iconic in anime and manga, each with their own overpowered jutsu. But when it comes to the franchise original bad guy, Orochimaru, sometimes I get the impression that a lot of fans do not realize the brilliance behind Orochimaru's writing and how there's actually a connection to Kaguya and the Ten Tails that so many people have overlooked, and it's because not enough people are familiar with the mythology and the folklore inspirations that Masashi Kishimoto has when he was writing the Naruto manga. And that connection is the Living Corpse Jutsu, the inspiration behind the Living Corpse Jutsu. And in today's video, we're not only going to explain that jutsu as well as the folklore inspiration behind it, but also explain how this also connects to the Ten Tails and Kaguya. So in order to understand the Kaguya connection, we first have to look at the Living Corpse Jutsu and the subsequent inspiration behind it in Japanese folklore as well as in Asian folklore as well. Starting things off with the first aspect, the Living Corpse Jutsu. This is a forbidden jutsu due to the fact that while it doesn't harm the user per se, it does violate the very laws of nature, which in turn makes it a forbidden jutsu. This jutsu allows Orochimaru to transfer the essence of his soul to another person's body, essentially making him immortal. This is done by transferring the person's mind and their soul into a body. But the trade-off is that after a certain amount of time, the body of the host begins to rot. But Orochimaru, using this jutsu, is able to stay alive inside the body for as long as the body is able to hold up. And it's been alluded to that if there was a perfect body, Orochimaru would be able to stay inside that body for its full lifetime. Inside of Orochimaru, the soul of the person whose body he took over still exists, but they are suppressed. And when he switches to the new body, the souls of the old body travels alongside with them. However, when we dive deeper into the inspiration behind the Living Corpse Jutsu, this is where you're going to see the foundation for the concept of the Ten Tails as well as for Kaguya's revival. So the inspiration behind the Living Corpse Jutsu is Kotoku, which its origins are starting way back in the Nara period of Japan, which has also been the source for quite a few elements in Masashi Kishimoto's writing because he's borrowed from this time period quite a bit. So Kotoku in folklore is a type of magic that in the Chinese version of it is referred to as being Gu magic, but they're essentially one and the same, whether you're looking at the Japanese or the Chinese version, which for this video, we're going to do both. In the folklore, in order to practice Kotoku, a sorcerer would throw dozens of insects and poisonous beasts inside of a jar. He let them kill each other until one of these beasts survived, which would now have a concentrated venom in all the poisonous animals that were devoured. And he would then use those fluids to either poison a person, or he could use them to control a person, cause a person grave misfortune, or in some cases just outright kill them. Kotoku can also be used as a bearer of good luck, which means that you can create great wealth for yourself, but the trade-off is that in each case, the Kotoku must be fed, and not feeding the Kotoku will bring out the anger of the Kotoku. There has to be equivalent exchange in order for the Kotoku to work. So for instance, if the Kotoku is used for riches, then you have to feed the beast by placing all your riches onto the road along with interest payments. And if you don't do so, then the insect or the poisonous beast will eat up the home of the user of the Kotoku. Now, if used by the wrong person, the Kotoku can also be used to bring about great death, because if this person used the ritual for riches or to curse someone and didn't know about the repayment, they themselves would be at the risk of the animal's rage. Now, where this connects to Orochimaru is that he wasn't mixing insects together in a jar and he wasn't making them fight to the death, but we've seen him implement elements of Kotoku blatantly as well as subtly. A blatant example is how during the Sasuke retrieval arc, when it became clear that Orochimaru was not going to get Sasuke's body in time, he and Kabuto had all the prisoners gathered together, battled to the death, and the last prisoner standing, Genyumaru, was the one person whose body was selected to be Orochimaru's vessel. And in exchange for Orochimaru taking over the body of the one he deemed to be the strongest, he vowed to let Genyumaru's people go free. A more subtle example of Kotoku being used by Orochimaru is how he uses the curse marks that had a high mortality rate in order to see which people he gave the markers to could survive the curse mark and ultimately be of use to him. For the Living Corpse Jutsu, the Kotoku comes with him using his due diligence to find a body that stands out from all the other potential bodies in order to be used for his soul transference. As we've seen with Orochimaru, when he uses the Living Corpse Jutsu, he keeps his own mind and soul, but gains access to the powers, Kekkei Genkai, knowledge of the person whose body he takes over, and he's in absolute control, much in the same way that the Kodoku ritual has the surviving beast gain the poison of the various animals that it came into contact with during the ritual, and the Kodoku can be used to curse people, control people, bring them great wealth. And this is where we're going to tie everything back together with Kaguya and Orochimaru and the Ten Tails all being tied together in one basket for you. So essentially, Kodoku is considered to be demon magic in Asian folklore. Orochimaru was using demon magic. Kaguya and the Ten Tails have that connection to the demonic statue of the Outer Path, better known as the Ten Tails Husk. But let's go even deeper here so you can see the full connection, but you should start having the wheels turning in your brain right now. Let's start with the Ten Tails. The Gidomazu statue, better known as the demonic statue of the Outer Path, is the Ten Tails Husk that remained after the chakra has been stripped away from the body. All the tail beasts from the 1 tails all the way to the 9 tails are sealed inside the demonic statue of the Outer Path, and upon giving the chakra of the 9 Biju, it began to transform into the creature we associate as being the Ten Tails. That is a form of Kodoku, but it continues when we look at the results afterwards. The person with the Rinnegan who uses the 6-pass coffin seal to seal the Ten Tails into their body to become the Ten Tails Jinchuriki is using a form of Kodoku. We've seen this twice with Obito and Madara. We see Kodoku again once Madara goes through the trouble of absorbing the God Tree and awakening the Rinne Sharingan, all for Zetsu to perform a variation of Kodoku by using the Chinese version of Kodoku, in particular the Gu magic variation, which as longtime viewers, you guys all know, Masashi Kishimoto mixes and matches a lot of folklore from all over the Asian continent. So in this version, the final poisonous creature left standing will be devoured by a worm larva, which ties into the spirit of the Gu magic and the Gu monster spirit. Now let's look at what we have here. So you have Zetsu. When he detached from Obito's body, he took on a gooey type of an appearance, and now you see why. Zetsu used Madara, the last person standing that was seeking to gain the power of the Ten Tails, as a way to be a vessel of sorts for Kaguya, which goes back to the Kodoku, which makes Madara's betrayal by Zetsu that much more significant. Whether or not you want to say he was cursing Madara by using him as a means to resurrect Kaguya, or he was just in control to an aspect, that's gonna be up for your interpretation of it. Outside of the circumstances of Madara's betrayal by Zetsu, Kaguya's resurrection, and Zetsu having a gooey appearance at time in that final arc, we also have the fact that Kaguya had her chakra extracted to absolute zero by the 6-pass Chibaku Tensei. When that happened, we saw the Biju being removed from her. We even saw Madara's body get spat out, which is another nod to the Kodoku. It's actually really brilliant to see how this method was used for one of the first villains that we meet in the Naruto series, and it was tied up in a bow in the last arc of the series and put on full display in volume 71 of the manga. So my question to you guys is, how many of you guys actually knew about Kodoku? Let me know down in the comment section below, and what other series are you familiar with that use Kodoku? Everyone click here for my new Black Clover chapter review, and click here for this throwback video on the channel.